I wasn't on the guest list for my grandson's first birthday. Imagine arriving with your best dress pressed, carrying a carefully wrapped gift for the baby you love more than life itself, only to be told, politely and firmly, that you don't belong. The hall was filled with balloons, laughter, and the smell of cake, but not a single space had been saved for me. My own son, Daniel, looked through me with cold eyes, and his wife, Sophie, smiled as if I were a stranger trespassing on private property. Humiliation is a subtle blade. That day, it found my throat. By evening, the humiliation would become seed, cold, stubborn, and alive. My name is Helena. I'm 71 years old. And last Saturday, under silver balloons and frosting sweet air, I learned that the boy I raised, the boy I carried through fevers and homework and heartbreaks, had become a man who could erase me with a pen stroke on a guest list. The night before, I had pressed my navy blue dress with care. Not glamorous, not old-fashioned, something dignified, something that said, present but not in the way. I wrapped a soft cardigan for little Leo, gray wool with wooden buttons, the kind of sweater you imagine surviving in photographs long after people forget the arguments that happened around them. I tied the package with brown paper and ribbon, wrote for Leo, with love from Grandma, and placed it by the door. I didn't sleep much. My mind wandered to all the birthdays I had built for Daniel, piñatas swinging in our tiny backyard, supermarket cakes with plastic soccer balls, the year I stayed up past midnight blowing balloons until my fingers ached. I used to believe love worked like compound interest. Every sacrifice, every late night, every coin bent out of shape would someday return doubled in kindness. Perhaps I invested in the wrong bank. Morning arrived with pale winter sun. I did my hair, put on my pearls, and took a taxi to the parish hall. The car smelled faintly of pine air freshener. My stomach churned like I was about to take an exam I hadn't been told to study for. At the door stood a young woman with a clipboard and headset, the modern gatekeeper. Good morning. Name, please? Helena Costa, I said. I'm Daniel Costa's mother. Leo's grandmother. She ran a finger down her list. Paused. Looked again. The smile stiffened, polite as starched linen. One moment, ma'am. I'll check with the hosts. She slipped inside. Through the open door, silver and blue balloons, a cupcake tower glittering with sprinkles, and a giant number 1 leaning like a moon about to tip. Leo sat on Sophie's hip, a crooked paper crown wobbling above his eyes. He laughed at a bubble machine. The sound cracked something quiet inside my ribs. Daniel came first, tall in a pale shirt, a smile that evaporated as soon as he recognized me. Mom, he said flatly. What are you doing here? I came to celebrate Leo. To give him his gift. I held out the small package like evidence of a life. Sophie followed behind, perfume like cold flowers. Helena, she said sweetly, with steel under the sugar. We didn't think you'd come. You didn't invite me, I said softly. I thought, maybe you'd just forgotten. It's not about forgetting, she answered. We wanted to keep it intimate. Just close family. You understand, don't you? I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. You're not on the list, Mom, he muttered. We talked about our rules. Rules. Lines they drew after I had paved the road that carried them here. Rules had meant nothing when I worked double shifts to pay school fees, sat through nights of fever, went without new shoes so he could walk into classrooms with his head high. Now their rules shut me out of my grandson's first birthday. I am close family, I whispered. Closer than anyone here. Daniel rolled his eyes, new to me, a language I had never taught him. Don't make a scene. Just go home. Please. Sophie touched his arm, cueing the performance. We'll send you photos, she said. Don't worry. You won't miss much. Photos. As if I were a polite follower peering into their staged lives. I could have begged for 5 minutes with Leo, one photograph by the cupcake carousel, the small human right of a grandmother. Instead, I smiled, a smile you wear when grief threatens to spill. I understand perfectly, I said. Have a beautiful party. I turned and stepped into the brittle winter air. The sky was a washed-out blue you only get in January. Balloons bumped their strings against the roof, trying to escape. I sat on a low stone wall and felt the ribbon cut into my palm. Families arrived laughing, carrying presents larger than mine. Inside, the singing swelled. I listened to my grandson's birthday from the outside, a beggar at a banquet. In the taxi home, the gift sat on my knees like a quiet witness. The driver hummed with the radio. The city kept being a city, shops, traffic lights, people with grocery bags, while my world tilted. My apartment held me the way small rooms do, clean, stubborn, dignified. I laid the gift on the table, smoothed the paper one last time, slid it into the dresser. The kettle began its gentle shouting. My phone buzzed, Sophie, then Daniel, you shouldn't have come. You made things uncomfortable, our rules. I silenced it. If you're still with me, and if a door that should have been yours was once shut with a polite smile, breathe with me. Have you ever been shut out by the people you love most? If this story touches something raw in you, share your experience in the comments and subscribe. These stories find women in the dark and turn on a light. I scrolled to Marcos, ADV. He'd been my lawyer for more than 20 years, witness to every paper I signed for the life behind Daniel's illusions. He answered at once. Helena. Are you all right? I'm fine, I lied. It's time, Marcos. Are you sure? Once we begin, there's no way back. I looked at the quiet package in the drawer, the empty chair across the table, the ghost weight of a toddler in my arms. I've never been more sure. Then we move forward, he said. Quiet. Methodical. Irreversible. That night, while the party balloons still floated over rented tables, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook open. I hadn't written in years. The page was white and waiting. I wrote one sentence: I retire from motherhood. Not from love, that stubborn ember would glow in some corner forever, but from duty. From servitude. From being the quiet shadow that swept crumbs no one else could be bothered to see. Daniel had said, boundaries. Fine. I would keep the lines that mattered, mine. 2 days later Marcos arrived with a slim folder. He had the eyes of a man about to deliver news to a widow. Are you sure, Helena? He asked again, sitting where Daniel once built Lego towers. I was sure the moment I was told I didn't belong at Leo's birthday, I said, pouring coffee. I raised Daniel from 3. I gave him my name, my health, my life. If I can be erased with one gesture, then so can he. He opened the folder. Here are the accounts. Here's the deed. And here, a paper slid across the table, is the mortgage you've been paying quietly for Daniel's house. We can end the payments this month. Legally, it will revert to you in 90 days if he defaults. I touched the paper like it might bruise. Years of quiet sacrifices sat there in neat lines. Daniel believed he had built his home through salary and merit. In truth, I patched his holes and fed his pride with invisible hands. End them all, I said. It will cause shock, Marcos warned. Humiliation causes shock too, I replied. Let him taste it. I walked to the market for bread and a small piece of cheese. Nothing extravagant. Ordinary women pushed carts filled with onions, soap, milk, each of us carrying histories folded into grocery bags. None of them knew I had an earthquake in my purse. The first call from Daniel came 3 days later. Not angry, annoyed, like a man whose package is late. Mom, did you forget to pay the electricity? The bill bounced. No, I said. I didn't forget. I'm not paying anymore. What do you mean? A crack in the voice. I mean the house isn't my responsibility. For years, I carried that weight. Now you carry your own. He laughed, short, sharp. You can't just stop. I have a baby. So did I said. When you were 3. And 5. And 25. I carried them all. This isn't fair. Neither is shutting your mother out of your son's first birthday, I said, and hung up. That was the first thread pulled from the cloth he thought wouldn't fray. 2 days later, Sophie called. Her voice was syrup over vinegar. Helena, what are you doing? Daniel says you're refusing to help. Don't you care about your grandson? I care very much, I said. Which is why I won't teach him that women exist to be used and discarded. He will not learn that lesson from me. You're selfish, she snapped. Leo deserves better. Then be better, I said, and ended the call. I sat by the window knitting a scarf. Wool slid steady through my fingers. Streetlights blinked on. My phone buzzed, I let it sing to itself. Revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's silence, the absence of the hand that always cleaned up the mess. By week's end, Daniel's tone shifted to desperation. Mom, the mortgage is overdue. They're sending letters. What's going on? The house you live in was bought with my money, I said, steady as a ledger. I've paid for it all these years while you believed it was yours. That illusion is over. If you want to keep it, pay for it yourself. That's insane. You're my mother, you're supposed to help me. No, I said softly. I already did. I'm helping you learn. I lit a candle and ate soup and bread at my small table. For the first time in years, freedom tasted like the silence of my own company. A week later, Marcos called. Helena, the bank contacted me. Daniel hasn't paid. The house will begin the legal process of reverting to you in 90 days. I closed my eyes and saw Sophie's powdered face when she realized the curated life was collapsing. Proceed. Near midnight, Daniel called again, voice broken. Mom, please. Sophie says I've ruined everything. I need you to fix this. The last time I tried to fix something, I said, I was told I didn't belong. I hung up. The cardigan for Leo lay folded in my drawer like a quiet promise. I touched it before bed, whispering a prayer he could not hear. One day you'll know, little one. One day you'll understand who I was. For now, silence was enough. But the storm had only begun. I had always imagined revenge would taste bitter, like medicine forced down. When it came, it tasted clean, like water after drought. For weeks I let the quiet do the work. No visits, no calls, no quick rescues when Daniel and Sophie tripped over their own carelessness. The first time the electricity was cut, Sophie sent a voice message trembling with rage. Helena, this is humiliating. The neighbors saw the trucks. Do you want Leo to live like this? Turn the lights back on or you'll regret it. Under the outrage, I heard fear. Fear is a seed I intended to harvest. I opened my old file box, the one hidden behind coats and blankets. Inside, neat folders with labels only I could read, deeds. Mortgages. Transfers. Education. Medical. Work. Every sacrifice I made, every lie I allowed Daniel to believe, preserved like a museum exhibit. Time to build a tour. Marcos and I met at his small, immaculate office, the plant by the window stubbornly dying as always. He placed a thick folder on the desk. Everything, deeds proving you own the house, bank records of your payments, copies of the co-signatures you gave him. Once he sees this, there's no argument left. Good, I said, sliding it into my handbag. I'm not after arguments. I'm after silence. His. That evening I requested a meeting with Daniel at his workplace, not in a cafe or my kitchen, his arena, where he believed his authority still worked. Revenge prefers the right stage. We sat in a glass-walled conference room. He looked pale and tired, a man already drowning in shallow water. Mom, this has gone far enough. Sophie and I, sit, I said. The old command surprised us both. He obeyed. I opened the folder slowly, laying out documents like cards only I knew how to play. This, I tapped the deed, is the house you claim as yours. Paid with my money. My signatures. My sweat. He flipped through pages, jaw tight. That can't be. It can and it is, I said, sliding bank records forward. Every mortgage payment I made. Quietly. While you and Sophie posed by Christmas trees and posted about your hard-earned home. He pushed the papers aside, color rising. Why are you doing this? You're supposed to be proud of me. I was, I said. Until you decided I didn't belong at my grandson's birthday. Until you managed me like bad lighting. Leo needs stability, he whispered. Leo needs a father who stands on his own feet, not a parasite feeding on his grandmother's sacrifices. I left him staring at the ruins of an empire built on my receipts. With each step toward the elevator, I felt a year return to my spine. 2 days later Sophie rang my buzzer until Mrs. Navarro threatened to call the police. I let Sophie in. She stormed down my hall like a weather system in perfume. How dare you, she hissed. You've poisoned Daniel against me. Do you know what people will say? They'll say truth found its voice, I said, placing my teacup down with deliberate calm. They'll say Sophie married a man propped up by his mother's hands. She called me insane. I told her I had retired from motherhood and was ensuring my retirement was complete. She slammed the door. The frame rattled, my teacup did not. The next blow came from the world. Someone, colleague, neighbor, whispered about Daniel's poor performance. Whispers became emails, then comments. He called me frantic. They're saying I only got the job because of you. Is it true? Yes, I said. Without my influence, you'd never have lasted a month. And now, without it, you won't last another. Silence at the end of the line tasted like an endpoint. Revenge is never one blow, it's a series of precise cuts. Over the following weeks, I released fragments, receipts, letters, contracts. Never all at once. Enough to keep them scrambling, panicking, begging. Neighbors whispered. Friends drifted. The image they'd built, successful, independent, admired, crumbled piece by curated piece. And me? I watered my plants. I walked in the park. I knitted Leo's scarf, though I knew I might never see him wear it. True revenge isn't in the shouting. It's in the silence afterward, when those who hurt you hear only the echo of their own downfall. And that silence was just beginning to sing. The call that changed the room's temperature came from the party planner with the headset. Her name was Lila. She found my number through a church acquaintance and spoke like someone who had rehearsed being brave. Mrs. Costa. I think you should see something from Saturday. The way you were treated, it didn't sit right with me. She sent a 15-second clip, doorway, balloons, Sophie's lacquered voice. She'll ruin the aesthetic, Daniel murmuring, just tell her it's close family, and Lila's small apology in between. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. Ordinary cruelty baked into a polite afternoon. I watched it twice. I saved it. Some truths don't need editing, they need witnesses. Sophie worshipped the aesthetic. Life to her was a row of curated squares, pale linens, tiny shoes lined like ducklings, a jar of wooden spoons that had never seen stew. She worked part-time at a boutique that sold fabric stories to women who wanted to believe Tuesday could be transformed by a hanger. The lighting was soft. The prices were not. It was her cathedral. If revenge is precision, aim for the altar. On Thursday I invited Mrs. Navarro for tea. She arrived with guava pastries and orthopedic shoes that outlived fashion. I placed my words on the table like a folded map. She listened like a woman who had known many winters. Querida, what will you do? I'll answer in her language, I said. In pictures. We made a list of women who would be believed before I would, names with memberships, holiday cards printed on heavy paper, husbands on boards, committees that eat dessert with spoons the size of baby shoes. This isn't bitterness, it's architecture. The world is an old house with stiff doors. You push the latch where it gives. By Sunday afternoon, I had 5 names and 2 rides. I called each with the same steady opening. I need a small favor for a mother told she didn't belong at her grandson's first birthday. The story landed like a needle in fabric. Sometimes all you need is a single stitch. Tuesday, we met outside Sophie's boutique at 10, when the glass gleamed and clothes rested like patient swans. The mall smelled of lemon cleaner and pretzels. I wore my navy dress and good pearls, cool moons at the throat. Mrs. Navarro wore her floral blouse and a lipstick with the courage to be red. The others arrived in pairs, Mrs. Andrade from the Historical Society, laughter capable of shushing a room, Vera, who runs the church closet and can appraise a coat at 10 paces, 2 sisters whose last name outperforms a credit score, and old Mrs. Rojas, who remembers everything and forgets nothing. We were not a mob. We were the weather. We entered separately. Not to make a scene, but to set one. Sophie stood at a round table draped in hand-stitched linen, arranging scarves with a surgeon's focus. She looked up, saw me, smiled in a way that made air colder. Helena. What a surprise. Good morning. My voice was the temperature of cooled tea. I lifted a dress from the front display, soft, pale, worth a month of groceries back when Daniel was 10. I'll take this. Her brows flickered, a small arithmetic glitch. She didn't know my means. She only knew the story she'd written, old, needy, in the way. The trained smile returned. Lovely choice. Would you like to try it on? No. I know my size. I added a rain-colored cardigan and 2 scarves I didn't need. At the register she waited for hesitation. I gave her a card that didn't gasp at the total. Green light. Long receipt. Tissue that rustled like polite applause. Have a beautiful day, she said, voice a shade too tight. You too. Oh, and one more thing. I let the pause breathe. I'll be speaking to your manager. About Saturday. About the way you said I would ruin the aesthetic. Color rose under her powder. How did, anything performed in public is theater, I said. And theater has critics. I left my purchases at the counter and walked to the back office. The manager, kind eyes, ledger brain, looked up as I knocked. I set my phone down and pressed play. 15 seconds. Humiliation lives fast. We pride ourselves on service, she began, the phrase worn smooth. Your clientele are women like me, I said, gently, not sweetly. Women who've given our lives to other people's comfort. We dress ourselves to be presentable when we are not wanted. Your associate used my grandson's birthday to rehearse a prejudice she keeps pressed like a blouse. I'm very sorry, she said. I'm not here for an apology, I replied. I'm here for consequence. Not justice. Not mercy. Consequence, the scale balancing its own weights. I slid an envelope across the desk, dates, times, messages from Sophie, tidy little knives labeled, curated, aesthetic, and those lines she drew, and a printout of a post she'd written about older relatives who drain the joy from modern families, illustrated with a stock photo of a silver-haired woman cropped to anonymity. Perhaps she didn't realize she'd been writing about me. Perhaps grandmothers are interchangeable in her world. The manager read like a doctor reading a chart above your head. She closed the envelope and rested her hands on it like a prayer book. We'll handle it, she said. Discreetly. Properly, I corrected. Discretion is the blanket people lay over shame to keep it warm. Her eyes met mine, something tired in them softening. We open in 15 minutes. Would you prefer to leave before I speak to her? I prefer to be a customer at the counter. Out front, Mrs. Andrade examined handbags with pointed questions that turned the price into a punchline. The sisters moved with the quiet dignity of women never told to wait. Vera hovered by the children's rack, touching a sweater the size of Leo's spine. The manager beckoned Sophie to the back. Through the glass I watched a silent play, the manager's steady mouth, Sophie's white hands, the bend of a neck when someone who's always been believed is finally not. Relief came like cool air. I am not proud of it, and I am. Two truths can share a chair. They returned. Sophie's powder couldn't hide the color leaching from her face. She rang up a few sales with the mechanical grace of a figurine that needs winding. The manager flipped the door sign to open, stood at the entrance greeting women by their names. Names are currency. She had a surplus. We made our purchases. We didn't haggle. We left reviews in the parking lot, exact, not cruel. Praise for lighting and selection and managerial professionalism, a polite warning about one associate whose remarks about older customers were unbecoming of the brand. No lies. Mirrors held at the correct angle. By noon, two women we hadn't called posted their own small stories. Times Sophie made them feel like clutter in their daughters' weddings, like bad lighting in their grandsons' photographs. Pebbles, not boulders. But pebbles start avalanches when the slope is ready. At 2, Lila texted, "It's spreading. People are sharing the clip. Not because it's shocking. Because it's ordinary." That's how reputations crack, not with scandal, but with recognition. At 3, Sophie called. I didn't answer. Her voicemail sounded like a string wound too tight. "You've ruined my job. How could you drag me through the mud when you say you love Leo?" I listened twice. Then I deleted. Love is not a leash. At 5, an email from the boutique. "We appreciate your patronage and concerns. Please accept our apologies. The associate you mentioned is no longer with us." A gift card blinked at the bottom. I didn't use it. I gave it to Vera for the charity closet. Some dresses do better work when they stop being symbols. Dinner, rice, beans, collards with garlic. A meal that has held poor families upright for centuries. I ate slowly. Revenge burns calories you didn't know you had. When the dishes shone, I took the document envelope out again. Not to savor. To plan the next cut. Sophie wouldn't sit quietly. She would try to reclaim the narrative, post Leo's soft fist clinging to her finger, caption about toxic elders and protecting our peace. Tag me. Invite the strangers to lift her. But I had spent a lifetime invisible while doing visible work. My only real talent was building consequence in rooms where no one checked under tables. Morning. I carried a small box to the church basement where Vera does holy work with hymns. Clothes become courage there. "I need a favor," I said. "And a receipt." She laughed. "You and your receipts." Receipts are how women like us remember we were there. Inside the box lay the boutique dress, cardigan, scarves, soft, expensive, unnecessary. "Find 3 women who need to walk into a room and be treated as if the carpet knew their names," I said. "Make sure the tags are still on." Vera's eyes warmed. Done. I clipped the boutique's apology email to the donation receipt. Not for taxes. For the story. Everything is story, the trick is writing your own ending. By afternoon, the posts began, not mine. Never mine. A mother whose daughter had a job interview, standing taller in a pale dress that told a room to behave. A grandmother not invited to a christening, wearing a rain-colored cardigan to her garden instead, a photo of her hands in the dirt, "I belong to the living things." An aunt who went to a parent-teacher conference in a borrowed scarf. Tired teachers looked up and said good evening like they meant it. Sophie posted Leo in a high chair, cheeks like peaches, caption exactly as predicted, "Protecting our peace from negativity." Friendly applause in the comments, hollow, then less hollow when women in pearls and orthopedic shoes answered with a different piece, "Respect is not negativity. Exclusion is not a boundary. We were here before your candles and after your confetti." At 7, Daniel called. Muscle memory reached for the phone. "Mom, Sophie got fired. She says it's your fault." Leo's crying, "Everything is," he stopped. He has never learned to finish a request because I always did. "No," I said. "You can. Please. Just talk to the manager, she won't." And she shouldn't. He exhaled, a sound like a bruise. You're enjoying this. I'm not. Enjoyment isn't the word. I found the right one. Clean. Clear. Exact. I am not turning the lights back on in a house where I am asked to sit in the dark. We said goodbye like people who finally understand some bridges don't mend. But Daniel's undoing had started long before that call. The first crack was at his job. For years, Daniel had coasted on invisible scaffolding I built beneath him, recommendations, favors, subtle payments to smooth late fees, calls to keep his position steady when supervisors grumbled. Now, without my invisible hands, the scaffolding trembled 2 weeks after Sophie stormed out of my apartment. Marcos called. His tone was almost apologetic, as if he were a doctor delivering a diagnosis to a patient who'd already guessed the truth. Helena, he said, Daniel's employers have reached out. They're considering termination. Apparently, his performance has been less than satisfactory. I let the words rest on the table between us, alongside my half-empty cup of tea. Less than satisfactory, I repeated, almost tasting the understatement. That's polite for failure. He's missed deadlines. Lost clients. Arrived late. Without your influence, the board has no reason to keep him. I nodded, calm. Then let him go. Marcos hesitated. You truly want me to stay silent? Yes, I said. Silence is my gift now. It's more powerful than every favor I ever called in. At work, Daniel's decline became a spectacle. Colleagues whispered that his success had always been smoke. That his promotion last year had less to do with his skill and more to do with someone pulling strings. The whispers grew into full sentences, and sentences became consensus. The office is cruel in its own way. It devours weakness faster than hunger devours bread. Soon, no one asked him to join meetings. His inbox filled with cold CCs instead of requests. By the end of the month, he was summoned into a glass office and left an hour later with a box of belongings and a face drained of color. That night, he called me. I answered, not out of duty, but curiosity. Mom, he began, voice broken, they fired me. Said I wasn't reliable. That I never should have been promoted. Do you know what that feels like? To be humiliated in front of everyone? Humiliation. He said it like it was a new word, sharp and cutting. I let the silence linger before I spoke. Yes, Daniel. I know exactly what that feels like. He didn't reply. Only the sound of shallow breathing on the other end, as if he had finally recognized the mirror I held up. Losing his job was only the beginning. Bills piled up. The mortgage, no longer paid by my hands, turned into late notices, then warnings, then the heavy envelope of foreclosure. Sophie's credit cards, once discreetly covered by my transfers, were now rejected in boutiques she once entered with confidence. Her anger erupted like boiling milk, messy, overflowing, impossible to ignore. Neighbors heard the fights. The thin walls of their suburban house carried Sophie's shrill accusations and Daniel's desperate denials into every adjacent kitchen and living room. By the third week, the street no longer greeted them with polite nods. Curtains twitched. Conversations halted when they walked by. Reputation, once so carefully staged, crumbled like plaster under damp. Sophie posted carefully curated photos online, Leo smiling, a plate of pancakes, a vase of tulips. But the captions grew strained. Family first. Protecting our peace. Happiness is homemade. Each one was a patch over a hole too wide to hide. People noticed desperation even through filters. The likes dwindled, the comments grew thin. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday. Daniel called me again, his voice frantic. They're taking the house. Mom, please, you have to stop this. This is Leo's home. He doesn't deserve this. Neither did I deserve to be left outside his first birthday, I said. My tone wasn't cruel, it was factual. But I survived. So will he. Please, he begged. I'll do anything. I closed my eyes, picturing the cardigan still folded in my drawer, untouched since that winter afternoon. Do it without me, I said, and hung up. By now, Sophie's fury had grown into something volcanic. She couldn't stand being poor, not even temporarily, not even in pretense. She stormed through the boutique one morning demanding her job back, shouting that she'd been sabotaged. Customers recorded her on their phones. By afternoon, the video circled online. Disgraced saleswoman throws tantrum. Her name was tagged. Her face froze mid-rage for strangers to laugh at. She came to me again that week, dragging Leo in a stroller like a shield. I opened the door because sometimes revenge requires witnesses. You ruined me, she hissed. My job, my reputation, my marriage. You sit here sipping tea while I drown. I poured her a glass of water and set it on the table between us. She didn't touch it. You ruined yourself, I corrected. I simply stopped covering the cracks. Her eyes darted around my apartment, searching for weakness, dust, disorder, loneliness. She found none. My rooms were small but exact. My table gleamed with lemon polish, my curtains fluttered with clean air. There was no chaos to mock, no fragility to exploit. What do you want from me? She asked finally, voice cracking. Nothing, I said. That's the difference. You wanted me erased. I want nothing at all. Except, perhaps, silence. She stood, yanking the stroller so sharply Leo whimpered. I bent to touch his hand as she pulled him away. His tiny fingers curled around mine for a moment, instinctive, trusting. Sophie slapped my hand off. Don't touch him, she snapped. You don't deserve him. As she stormed out, I whispered to the empty room, one day, he'll know. Daniel's unraveling turned public after that. Without Sophie's curated images and without my invisible scaffolding, his failures stood naked. He missed rent at the new apartment they managed to secure after foreclosure. He begged old colleagues for work, but no one wanted to risk hiring a man whispered about as incompetent, dependent, spoiled. At the grocery store, an elderly woman reportedly slapped him across the face, saying, "How dare you treat your mother like that?" The story spread faster than fact checks. Soon, he avoided public spaces altogether, afraid of whispers, afraid of recognition. He sent letters to Marcos, begging for mediation. He sent texts from unknown numbers, each one shorter, more desperate. Please. Just once. For Leo. I read them. I never replied. Then came the night Sophie returned, not as an enemy, but as a woman cracked open. It was late, rain slicking the pavement outside my building. The buzzer rang, insistent, until I answered. Helena, her voice crackled through the intercom. It's me. Please. Just 5 minutes. For him. I pressed the button. The door clicked. She climbed the stairs slowly, carrying Leo in a star-patterned blanket. Her hair clung damp to her cheeks, her eyes swollen from crying. When she reached my door, she didn't meet my gaze. She just whispered, 5 minutes. I let her in. My apartment was warm, the air scented with coffee and wax polish. She laid Leo gently on a cushion. He hiccuped, then fell asleep again, cheeks flushed from rain and tears. We sat across from each other, the table between us like a border. Sophie twisted her hands, then spoke in a voice stripped of its usual sugar. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't know how to be poor. How to live without the scaffolding you built. I thought Daniel could provide. I thought I could decorate reality into something tolerable. But it's all gone. I said nothing, letting her words tumble into the quiet. Finally, she lifted her eyes. Teach me, she whispered. Not how to win him back. Not how to humiliate you less. Teach me how to survive. The honesty startled me. For a moment, I saw not the polished predator who had sneered at my cooking and rolled her eyes at my sweaters, but a young woman terrified of life without props. I stood, walked to the dresser, and pulled out the package, the gray cardigan wrapped in brown paper and ribbon. I set it before her. I bought this for Leo, I said. I planned to give it at his party. I wasn't allowed. So I'll give it now. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped it. She pressed the wool to her face, breathing it in like a relic. Tears spilled freely. I don't deserve this, she murmured. No, I agreed. But he does. She nodded, clutching the cardigan. Then she looked at me, searching. And what do you want in return? I leaned forward. Leave Daniel. Her mouth fell open. What? You heard me. Pack your things. Take Leo. Leave. Daniel must stand alone if he's ever to feel the weight of consequence. As long as you stay, he'll hide behind you. Her lips trembled. And if I don't? I met her eyes, unblinking. Then I will dismantle whatever scraps of reputation you have left. I have documents. Recordings. Stories you wouldn't survive online. You already know I'm capable. Silence. Only Leo's breathing filled the room. Finally, Sophie whispered, "You're a monster." No, I said, calm. I'm a mirror. You and Daniel created this. I simply stopped sweeping the shards. She gathered Leo, clutching the cardigan to her chest. Her tears fell onto the wool, darkening it like raindrops. Without another word, she left. 3 days later, she was gone. Left Daniel a note scribbled on a receipt, "I can't do this. Don't call me." Daniel's collapse after that was swift. He lost his job prospects, his home, his wife. Friends stopped answering his calls. His name, once a casual nod in social circles, became a cautionary tale. He called me one last time. His voice was hoarse, raw. "Mom, please. I know I was cruel. I know I shut you out. But I'm still your son. Help me. Just once." I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and said the words that had waited decades. Once is never once, Daniel. Once is always again. And I am finished. I hung up. Blocked the number. And with that, motherhood ended. 6 months later, I lived by the sea. My apartment was modest, but sunlight draped itself across the walls every morning, and salt air fluttered my curtains like a hymn. My days belonged to books, walks, conversations with Mrs. Navarro, who insisted my life could shame the best soap operas. Leo turned 2 in photographs I glimpsed online. In one, he wore the gray cardigan, sleeves rolled over pudgy wrists, crumbs on his chin. My chest tightened, not with regret, but with recognition. Even in absence, I remained. Quiet, useful, warm. Daniel never found me. Sophie resurfaced online under another name, posting filtered beaches and cocktails, as if consequence could be blurred. Me? I wrote. A notebook filled with memories, receipts of sacrifice, notes of silence. I titled it Retired Motherhood. Not for others. For myself. To remind me that endings are choices. One evening, as the sky folded into indigo, Mrs. Navarro asked, "Helena, do you regret it? The way it ended?" I thought of Daniel's cold eyes at Leo's birthday door, Sophie's powdered smile, the silence that pressed me outside of my own grandson's laughter. Then I thought of my apartment, the sea breeze in my curtains, the taste of freedom in a cup of tea. "No," I said. "I regret not ending it sooner." She patted my hand and said the truth all wise women know. Sometimes, Querida, revenge is not punishment. It is release. That night, I closed my notebook on the final page. I wrote only one sentence, large and certain: dignity is the only inheritance I will leave behind. And I slept, not as a mother, not as a victim, not as a villain, but as a woman who had finally chosen herself.